Hello, welcome to the ACI channel, and we're here to interview digital transformation leaders. So let's learn from the people that have been involved in it. The book is great, but real life is what matters. So I'd like to introduce Joe Seaman, and he is a digital transformation leader. So I'll let him introduce himself. Joe, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how your digital transformation experience evolved and how it worked?
Yeah, sure. So I guess kind of give a little history of myself, and I always find it interesting for folks on how they get to where they are and sort of the path they take. And so for me, part of that is letting folks that are new to the space understand that there is a path forward, and the other part of that is everybody's path is different. So I started out first getting exposed to computers back in high school, and we were doing some basic, Pascal, basic programming and things of that nature, doing some games and things of that nature. And I thought that was interesting. So I said, maybe take some classes in college. And really college was focused more around the development side of the house. So looking at Fortran and machine language and doing the punch cards. And that really wasn't my calling. But once I graduated from college with a computer science minor, I realized that my love was in the software side of the house, and so being exposed to things like Lotus 1-2-3 and just sort of the capabilities of what you can do with the computer program, and trying to squeeze everything out of 64K and to make things run and things of that nature back in the Novell days and IBM LAN servers. So that led me down a path of really getting into sort of the networking side of the house and doing basically desktop support and network support for some large companies and things of that nature. And then from there, that just continued to snowball. So I took advantage of that and started doing some support for Microsoft, and then started doing some consulting and so as you gain more things within that, you learn more about the different environments. I think the most value I got was doing consulting, and particularly because of the exposure of the different environments, different cultures, different networking environments, different business requirements. So the more you get exposed to that, I think that really helps give that foundation. And to that point, having a good foundation of understanding how computers work really helps to understand sort of the building blocks on top of that. And those kind of Lego building block kind of engineering. Hey, let me just see how I can build this. Really helps to lends itself well in a technology space. So regardless of whatever the digital transformation is, whether that's we can start doing things on the web, or to that point we're starting to leverage cloud, IoT, and AI and things of that nature. There's always going to be something new and next associated with that. So really that's where I came from, and the sort of the buzzword of digital transformation really took its heart probably around 3 years ago when we started the company I'm working with. Really in earnest started looking at some of the changes that needed to be happening within the platforms, within the different programs, internal, external, sort of not only the customer facing type of stuff, but also just business operations. How do we get more efficiency? And so I think those are the kind of things that led us down a path to say, we either make the change now, or it's gonna become so unwieldy, so large and difficult to manage, that the cost of keeping that going is going to become out of sync. And so you then start cutting corners, and you then start saying, okay, what are we not going to do now instead of fixing it? And so those are difficult decisions to make as a company, and that's where we really said, for us to be in a position to take advantage of not only our customer needs, but also taking advantage of what our internal business operations are, we had to pivot, and that's basically started our journey to leverage those kind of technologies and how we can best use those.
So where did you start? So when you started to try to make changes, what was the first couple steps you took?
Yeah, the first thing is really defining sort of the vision, and really what that is saying, okay, what are we hoping to see, and what would be our ideal world? Imagine if kind of moment. And so that started that process of saying, okay, if we're going to do this, then does that change our business model at all? And so it changes you from maybe a customer facing, hey, we've got this cool widget, to maybe we're more now of a data company, or maybe we're more of a behind the scene, or maybe with a connectivity tissue between point A and point B, and we need to get better at those pieces there. And that's really our sweet spot. So part of that was looking to say, okay, who we were. And then the other part of that was really looking to say, okay, how do we get to what we consider to be the promised land? And then from that then built out to say, okay, well, what is it going to take for us to get there? And then you start breaking that down into manageable work efforts, and to that point, manageable concepts. We weren't going to solution anything. We were just trying to figure out conceptually, what does that mean, and how do we compartmentalize that? And let's at least try and draw out what are the things that are going to be required for this change. And that includes the people, the resources, the training, the technology base, obviously, and where those things all come together, and how that's going to work, I think was key for us to do, to at least lay out a roadmap of what exactly we were trying to do, rather than just change. We weren't just saying, okay, we're going to change for change. We're looking for something to get better. And so defining those metrics and saying, okay, this is when we know we've done well. This is when we know we've gotten to a better place, is when X happens. Whether or not we get there is another story, but that's the intent on where we're driving that.
What were your biggest mistakes, but also your biggest things you did that were the most helpful?
I would say the biggest mistakes were trying to get from step 5 to step 8 overnight, and not working through the process. And so in the excitement of it, and the excitement of, yes, we're all on this journey, there was tremendous momentum, a tremendous buy-in, that we did well with that. And I think those were the things that propelled us probably too fast, because we missed steps, and we missed the rigor and the sort of the defined processes of success. When you look at things like TOGAF or things of that nature, where you can say, yes, there's at least a path forward for us to do these kinds of things. So we were, some of the things we shortcut. We said, we know the answer. We know what that's going to be, and let's just get there, and let's just go with it. Let's put it in place, and we'll build around that, and we'll build around this. And some of those things were hard lessons learned, because we realized we missed some steps, and so that's causing rework on the back end, because we didn't do the proper steps to go forward with it. And so that's causing delays, and those were the things that I think we missed going into this, that we needed to be better disciplined in that area, and hold ourselves accountable, and as well as everybody else accountable, and to have that ripcord for anybody within the organization to say, stop, we're missing something here. So I think those were the opportunities for us to do better within this. Where it went well, I think having that initial buy-in went a long way. So we had buy-in from all levels of the organization, and I think that helps. That's almost a requirement now. But that only gets you so far, and so there's hard days ahead. And so everybody talks about hard days and difficult days ahead, and change. The concept of change, and where do I fit within that? Is my job safe? Is my career safe? All those things come into play. Those were areas where we started out well, but we lost track of some of that stuff, and we have to continue, remind ourselves to go back to that, and realize that we're working with people, and that they're the success for this whole thing to happen, regardless of whatever technology we use. So I think those were the areas where we started off well, and there was good success around that. And I think that's where I think we could have made some headways. Where there's other things as well is kind of looking at that from just the individual user's perspective. And I think the key for a lot of that is getting those key stakeholders from areas that you may not expect, and getting their at least feedback within that. so that they're buying in, but also you're understanding what their requirements are earlier in that process. And so, you get so down in the weeds of thinking, okay, how do I get this for the customer, that you lose perspective of everything else that's required to make that customer happy. And I think those are areas that you have to continue to get better at, and not only from an organizational perspective, but also from just an interaction perspective, and being comfortable in those conversations with folks, to be able to really drive out some of those problems that you may not get, or they may not feel comfortable saying, because they're afraid, or they're concerned that it's going to cause delays and things of that nature. Those are very real scenarios, and I think the biggest piece for us was trying to set up a quote unquote safe environment for that. But in COVID times and all that, it's a challenge, and how you still get that level of safety, that feeling of safety in the confines of a screen and a camera is difficult.
So how did you all work through the COVID-19 all remote and still succeed more on your digital transformation path?
Yeah, for that, there's been really good successes around that. So from an efficiency and productivity perspective, we are significantly more productive in that space. And some of that is due to the sort of the drive-bys, the sidebar conversations, morning conversations, lunch conversations. Those don't really happen anymore. So folks, they are producing more, but that's a short phase within that. And I mean short in the sense of you can do that for months, maybe a year, but eventually it's going to start wearing. And we're starting to see that now. We're starting to see some of the phrase of being remote, that interaction, that camaraderie, and those pieces there. And so what we've done is we've tried to at least have, once we were able to have at least face-to-face meetings, have, whether that's an event at the baseball game, or try and have a dinner together, or things of that nature. We've been fortunate to be in a state that allows that. And so that's been a godsend for us. But at the same time, it still is a regular, Monday through Friday challenge of trying to keep those communications going. So from that perspective, I think we've managed through that. Where we've struggled with that is we're a very social company. So people like those kind of communications. People like getting those kind of dialogues and offshoots. People like those drive-bys sometimes of saying, hey, I overheard so-and-so talking about X, Y, or Z, and have you thought about X? And so we miss those kind of things. And so it becomes a much more heavier influence on our written and quote unquote chat conversations than our verbal and in person type of communications. And so that presents its own set of challenges of, well, did they mean that, or why was that in caps, and why did you include CC on that person? So you get these weird dynamics associated with it that it reads into those kind of conversations more than they should. So you miss that feedback of dialogue and facial expressions and body expressions, that in the absence of that, you fill in the blanks, And so that's been a challenge for us on how we curtail that. And part of that is to continue to tell folks to pick up the phone and do a video call. And so we made a conscious effort to say, if we do any calls, that you have to be on video, and because at least have that, it's only from the shoulder up kind of stuff, but at least there's some sort of visual cues and feedback associated with that, and it also shows engagement within the conversation. So it takes away from folks being multitasking with four other things of, I've got the kids going over here, I've got a conversation going on over there, and I'm trying to fill out my email or finish up an email that I'm sending to. And that kind of thing may seem to be productive, but it's counterproductive to the task at hand of the purpose of the meeting. So the other piece was that we learned through that whole process was to be a lot more deliberate in our meetings. And I can't say there's nothing, and we're guilty, but at the same time, we've worked to try and improve that was really being to drive better meetings and better meetings by having an agenda, having a defined set of expectations. We've done really well with documenting meetings, so at least there's a repository, there's a recording, and so folks have really stepped up to say, all right, I'll post the meeting minutes, a couple minutes after this. So at least there's a record of that. And so what we do with that is the next step of how do we integrate that? How do we get better at ingesting all this data that we're capturing and having something of action to that? So I think that's really helpful within that. The other piece that I forgot to mention was as you have these kind of meetings, it becomes more one-on-one, and so it becomes a very half duplex kind of conversation, and it doesn't include everybody within that. And so what we've decided early on, well, actually later on within the process, was to understand that there's certain conversations where we have to call a timeout and say, this requires a larger audience. We're starting to go down a path where we either have to get better documentation around it, or we have to engage other people, because the subject matter that we're dealing with, I don't want to have to go tell the same thing to 4 other people. And so it becomes sort of a, classic put a pin in it, and let's make sure we can get the right audience so we can have a much richer conversation around that. Earlier on in the process, it was just very, okay, let me go talk to this person. Okay, let me go get the feedback and hang up with this person, talk to the other person. Let me go talk to that other person and say, oh, I forgot about that piece. Let me go talk to that subject matter expert. So from that perspective, the classic, 2 pizza rule and things of that nature, where we had to get the right participants in the room without overloading people, but at the same time, making sure that we had the right audience to at least discuss it and to provide context and further clarification about whatever decision we're trying to work towards.
How did you maintain buy-in?
There's a couple of things, and we've been fortunate in the sense that we're a small enough organization that we wear multiple hats, and so it's a little bit different in a larger organization where you're very siloed and you're very specific in your area, and maybe that's all you deal with. I only deal with the Linux center. I only deal with the network. I only deal with with the Salesforce integration or whatever it may be, and so that continued buy-in really has to come from leadership, and it has to come from leadership continuing to sell. You have to continue to sell the vision, sell the idea, because we have a very short memory, and so we forget about why we started this journey. We forget about those things because we get bombarded with family, work, other things, all those kind of distractions that take away from the original vision, and suddenly you forget, like, what the hell are we doing this for? So I think that's really key within that is making sure when you have those conversations, you're at least doing those things where you're expressing those. And some of that we do through our Agile and PI events. And so we continue to articulate that and spread that word so that everybody's on board. And to that point, we're not only giving sort of the roadmap for the next 10 weeks, we're also laying out, okay, remember why we're doing this. This is what we're looking to achieve. This is why we're doing it. It's the constant, answering the why. Why are we doing this? Why is this of value? Why is so-and-so doing this? Why is why was this decision made? Those kind of things we have to get very deliberate about, because there's constant questions around them. And so even though you think you may have answered it, there's still 14 other questions asked in different ways that have the same answer. But those are the things that lead to ambiguity and indecisiveness and uncertainty. And that leads to people checking out at that point, saying, I'm not sure what's going on. So I don't know what they're doing, and I haven't heard anything, so I'm out.
What would you say, so if you could tell all the people that want to get into digital transformation and technology, they want to get into this, where would you say, what advice would you give for them? Where would they start? Where should they start?
I enjoy reading. So there's been, there's no shortage of books on digital transformation. So I think with anything, it's find your passion. So whether that's in AI and machine learning and data science and things of that nature, or you want to get into big data and crunching numbers and looking at things different way and visualization of that data, and whether that's for fraud or for a different perspective and sort of forecasting those things to that, and then or to that point, cloud, and saying yes, I really think there's a value with where cloud is going. So there's the market potential for all of these technologies is incredible. And so if you really look at where the projections are, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Oracle, these guys, they're all being traded at discount right now for what the market potential that is out there for this kind of stuff. So there's a tremendous opportunity for folks to not only learn that stuff and to take advantage of it, but also realizing that there really is a significant amount of activity and wealth that's going to be generated by that digital transformation blocks within that. And so really you can't know it all. So focus on the things that you feel that would be of interest or passionate to you, and that passion will make things a lot easier. You'll accept those things more. You will want to absorb those things in a much more enjoyable fashion than being forced to. So you're not having to eat your vegetables. You can say, yep, I think big data is my chocolate cake, so I'm going to get all I can get about it. And that's what I'm going to go after. And you can definitely make a name for yourself. You can really carve out a great career in that area. And it doesn't necessarily have to be technology. There's so many avenues along that way that it's not just about zeros and ones and getting on the keyboard. Some of that is strategic thinkers, is being innovative, and being able to translate business problems. You may not know how to do it, but being able to articulate what the business problem is and be forward thinking. So there's always value for those kind of resources to at least have enough knowledge about where we are today, but to see around the corner and say, okay, I know that there's bad weather ahead, so I know how to prepare for that. So we need to prepare for that. Or, hey, we've got all downhill, so let's get as much speed as we can. So let's go and ride that as fast as we can. So it's all those kind of things of knowing where that next either speed bump or opportunity is. There's always going to be a need for those kind of folks. So don't feel like you have to be confined to being, okay, I just have to learn about computer science and become a nerd of sorts. That there's so many opportunities to take advantage of that digital transformation that we're in dire need of as a country. And
Well, and I always like to end on a funny note. What's the funniest thing that you've experienced in IT in your career? What's the funniest thing?
Funniest thing. I've always had, always got the most enjoyment of doing phone support. So when you're level 1 phone support for people that know nothing about technology, it is the most bizarre, strange, funny opportunity that comes across there. So sure enough, this was way back in the days, and we were doing phone support for Microsoft Windows. And lady calls up, and I have an engineer sitting next to me, and he's like, Joe, I need your help. I don't understand what this lady's doing. It's really confusing, and we're talking through it. And we're like, okay, if you just take a minute. There should be something, and we're trying to walk her through because we have no video. So we're trying to talk her through all of that. She's like, yeah, but the cup holder keeps getting in the way. And we're like, the machine doesn't have a cup holder. There's no way you should need a cup holder for what you're trying to do. You're just trying to connect it. And so, sure enough, it was the CD-ROM player. She opened the CD-ROM player and thought that was a cup holder. So she used that as her cup holder and was saying, yeah, I can't get anything to work because of that. So. Old school story, but yeah, it's funny. There's a number of things that you just kind of shake your head and be like, I will remember that.
Yeah, that will never. Yeah, I will always remember what that was when that happened.
So to that point, I appreciate those, you know, when my parents or friends or family that are up in their years and they struggle with the smartphones and things of that nature. It's, you know, patience is a virtue, and yes, what we're throwing at them is not easy, and so you'll hear a lot of things that just are, well, if you're in the space, that would make sense, you know.
Yeah,
So.
it's funny. I love my dad to death, but getting him to flip the screen on FaceTime sometimes is like, it's kind of it's like, where's the button? It's right there. Nope, I don't see the button.
Yeah.
The button's there. What do you see?
Yep. Am I on? Is this on? I can't hear anybody.
Yeah, it's so funny, and it's like you just have to respect that we're all at a different level of IT, and
Yeah.
we got to respect it. Well, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I'm sure a lot of your advice will really help people out there because a lot of people are struggling with this, so we need to learn from that.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
You're welcome.